probably in the replay, and this will be living in the replay for quite a while. So we are in for a nice event tonight because we're going to talk to a couple of women who have been successful entrepreneurs and have taken on a new venture together and longtime friends. And I think we've just got a great opportunity tonight to be very, very cognizant of celebrating women and work and kicking ass and telling the white patriarchy to go where they need to go. So we will do a quick little promo and we're just going to jump right into it.
There. I just wanted to take a quick break and quickly say if you like this program or any of our programming, you can support us. You can sponsor us. We have a mission here, and our mission is to bring voices to live streaming and to the world that don't normally get heard. If you check my Instagram and check the story about Olivia Robinson, you can see what I'm talking about. But I would really appreciate it if you could go to the sponsor page. I've got information there and sponsor me. You can do it right here on Haps, $5 a month, $50 a month, $10 a month, whatever you're comfortable with. But support our work and support this kind of programming. I think it's important and I hope you do too.
And we will be back with my image in just a second because I am busily trying to get my co-host who was going to co-host with us tonight in here. So give me 1 second and log in. And I just have to invite her. And we are going to be talking to Louise Browne and Sarah Reinhardt. And, you got to love the internet and how we make connections to people and where those connections can go and lead to because it is awfully amazing. And I am super, super thrilled to have both of you here. Let's bring you in. And I'm unmuting you, so don't click your mute buttons there. Hello to both of you. Oh, let's get our heads not being squeezed there. That's better. And then, good. And in is flying Rachel, too. Rachel, if you can hear me, flip your. You might be on the phone. That's why you're in portrait mode. All right. Denise says, hi, Louise and Sarah. We should have had you set up your camera and stuff, Denise, so you could come up and say hi if you want to hook it up
Hi, Louise.
and
Hi,
come up and say
Denise.
hi for a few
Hi,
minutes.
Denise. Denise was on
You
our
are
show.
definitely welcome. And all right, so let's start with how do we know each other? Who wants to go?
You mean
Sarah?
Louise and I,
Yeah,
or
like
the
how do we
three of
meet?
us?
Like I'm always interested to see what other people. I mean, this is pretty straightforward, but
By we, do you mean me and Louise?
no, the three of us. We'll get into you guys in a minute.
Like a week ago, after you had Denise on your show.
So it was just.
We know
that?
you from you did an excellent interview with Denise Cruz Castino and Anna
Lydia Monaco.
Monaco, and we loved it. And Denise said, "Hey, check out Haps TV. Here we are with Red."
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you did. And I noticed both of you were recording on YouTube. So, we should talk about that. The story, though, of the two of you. Now, my good friend and colleague and quasi business partner, because we've been doing a nonprofit together for a long time. So it's not really we're not business partners, but when she starts her story, a lot of times she starts, before she was born in Haiti. We don't have to go that far. But how did the two of you how'd you first meet or how did you first decide to do business together or something? Because you guys are pretty tight.
Yeah, we are. How are we? We're so tight. We met when our kids were in elementary school, and they were, third graders, and we were moms at the elementary school. And Sarah, do you want to take it further?
We had a mutual friend who introduced us, and one night we went out to play pool, and somehow it came up that we were both adopted, and then suddenly it was like me and Louise were bonded, and uh Karen, I mean, not that Karen was shoved out, but when two adopted people meet, it's an immediate connection and bond. It's um that no, if you're not adopted, you just don't understand it. So we just
So that was
Yeah.
there
and
from the
then from then
start.
on we
Yeah, it was there from the
Adoption.
start, and then we had a couple years our kids were in school together, and um, but what happened is one night we went out and had some drinks and some fun, and we were talking, and I'm like, "Let's start a business together." And Sarah's like, "All right, let's do it." Literally, but it took
Wow.
us a while. We owned a gourmet ice cream truck on the streets of Los Angeles, a catering truck, and owned that for 6 years and raised all the capital of ourselves. And we had women that invested in us, and friends and family, and we did quite well with that. And we kind of, we it took us a long time to open that. We won an award with the state,
actually
actually.
think about it. It didn't take us that long, right? Because
Yeah, I
we
mean,
got together, we started talking about it in the spring of 2011. By November, we had raised all the money and
yeah,
bought the truck and opened it by February. So it wasn't that long. It was less
it
than a
wasn't
year.
that long. Yeah,
Yeah.
and we
So
went through a lot of, we went to business school without going to business school. So we
mhm.
literally learned how to, do all our own social media, all our promotions, get ourselves out there and get booked for events. And we did high-end catering and TV shows, movie sets, celebrity birthday parties, like just Sarah and I running
Yeah,
ragged
all the people
all
that
the
wouldn't hire
time.
me as a writer definitely hired us as an ice cream truck.
Yeah, right. So wait a minute though. Hold on. Slow down a minute.
That's
Rachel, I
true.
don't know if you can hear me, but you're in, but turn on your camera. Yeah, so like wait, who knew how to make ice cream?
Well,
We
we
had
ended
a
up
product,
yeah. Yeah, we had a
and then
product, and we did organic and at one time organic, and then all natural ice cream. We worked with Beachy Cream, is still in business, I believe, ice cream, and
mm,
different, McConnells along the way.
Oh, cool. So
And
you had brands that you were
yeah,
selling, like my ice cream
and then
shop down the street, George's
well,
has a very
get
specific brand.
yeah,
we would get our base ice cream from them, and then we would make our own product, which was called a
Ooh.
scream ball. It was like a
yeah,
scoop of ice cream dipped in chocolate. We rented out a kitchen. We made the product.
yeah.
We had a
Sarah and I
Nice.
real
made
branding,
made
like
screen balls and flash
scream
froze these
balls.
things.
Yeah,
It was
Look.
pretty cool. We had t-shirts, we have balls, and we
yeah.
still do. So
I like that. I just slid in,
hi,
or she just
Rachel.
slid in.
Hi.
Hi, Rachel.
Rachel
Hi. Can you
and
hear me
Rachel
okay?
AO, and Rachel's a musician, and this is her first time, but she's an occasional co-host, and she's adopted. So it was like, well, geez, like I'm not
Ah,
adopted, so let's have somebody else that's adopted, especially that can get this perspective that the two of you are kind of pushing out, to the universe. In listening to some of your shows and the story, and we'll get back to the ice cream truck here in a second, but in listening to some of the shows and stories, it's already put a lot of things in my mind. But what I really want to be able to do is kind of spark a dialogue between the three of you as well. So, but Rachel, tell us a little bit about who you are. Hopefully, you're excited to be here, or something complimentary about me. I'm just kidding. And
Well, I'm
yeah,
very excited to be here, and I'm happy that you asked me to be on this particular show because I can definitely resonate with it because I am adopted. Um, I was on the show previously was it last month? Was it
probably a month
last month?
ago.
I don't know. All my days are like all mixed up. But I'm a singer-songwriter, and I just moved to Los Angeles, and I met Rev via Instagram, and the rest is history.
I know, the back in the day, there was a guy named Lucas, a guy named Spielberg, and about five other guys. You'd recognize their names if I could remember them. Katzenberg, maybe. But those guys ran Hollywood for a long time, and they ran together before that. But the interesting thing about anybody that's getting into live streaming, into podcasting or whatever, create teams, groups. You can't. It doesn't matter. You just can't do it by yourself. Even if you think you can do it by yourself, these mediums, just require other engagement with other people to pull these things off. And live streaming is definitely a team effort for me. So we'll quickly go to the delicious ice cream truck that you had for 6 years, and just give us we got to have come on, it's an ice cream truck for goodness sake. There's got to be a couple of crazy funny moments, like the brakes went out and you almost crashed into
That's
the
exactly
Pacific
what
or
happened.
How do
something.
you know that, actually?
That's exactly what happened. We had our brakes go out. I was driving. We were on
Oh
our
no.
way to a show. What was the show? It was
I think it
some
was Bob's Burgers or something,
no
and
no
we
no
were
no
in
no.
Laurel
It was
Canyon.
it wasn't, but it was like a lot. They were doing, I can't remember who it was. Anyway, it was in Sherman Oaks, for anybody that knows LA. And we're getting, and we were on our way there, and I noticed that the brakes were starting to go. I'm like, we got to make it to this show. This is we can't lose out on this. So we just kept going, and the brakes were
Prepaid
getting worse
catering
and
event.
worse and worse and worse. And then we did the event. We left, and we made it over Laurel Canyon. Like, I am pumping the brakes with my right, just sweating. I can't believe we're alive after that. We made it
I
right
can't either.
back.
I was like, Sarah, be
I
calm.
was
Like, I'm
putting
trying
it
to
in
talk to her like
park.
we're going to die.
We're really tight, and I was like jamming it into park to try to manipulate the brake. It was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, we had our
So
crazy.
yes,
We did our share of crazy things. We took that truck. It was a little 1971 or maybe even earlier postal truck, and
1970s,
a harvester postal truck, and we had
International
that thing.
Harvester.
Yeah, we had
Well,
it in
that's what
Palm
it was, a
Springs.
1970
Yeah,
International
yeah.
Postal truck
Picture
with no brakes.
picture your postman from the 1970s. We redid it. It was really cute, and it got us a lot of
Yeah,
great.
I saw a picture.
The Scream truck, and we were the Scream team. But now we're podcasters about adoption, which is our passion right now, our passion project.
And you have oh, wait a minute. There's a Scream truck, New Jersey on demand ice cream truck.
No, that's not.
No, I
We're
know.
the
I'm just
original.
saying, like somebody took your name after you um departed. I was going to try and get a picture of the old truck. Louise, I can't hear you for some reason.
Oh,
Oh,
you can't.
Sarah,
I
I'm
can't.
sorry.
Oh, Sarah. I
Are you there,
can't hear
Sarah?
Sarah either. Sarah. Well, while she's getting her volume back there.
Okay.
Killing.
Oh, well, hang on, too. Rachel, if you can still hear me, you're fine. The setup's just fine. I just thought if you could get some more light on you, cool. But, come right back. We want you here. And
Okay.
Sarah and Louise are with us. Louise and Sarah, I'm getting you mixed up in my head. Sorry. Sarah, can we hear you?
Sarah?
No, and you're not clicking. You're not. I think you've been disconnected maybe from your headphones and your device.
Huh. Well, I'll speak for
Yes.
Sarah just for
Go
right
ahead.
now till she gets that. So we came away from our ice cream truck. We both went back into our careers, and we were just talking and said, "Do you want to do like a passion project together again?" And she had been wanting to do a documentary about finding her biological family and all these different things. And I called her one day and said, "We need to do a podcast because we love podcasts." And we just, we could do it on the weekends, and we took off and just started doing it. And it's really important to us to be like the voices of, you know, what's going on in adoption, to start that. I mean, Rachel can relate to this too, but changing the narrative of adoption and having people get their stories out there and this kind of thing. Is Sarah back with her volume?
Well, let's see. Sarah, can you man. Nope. Oh, it's just been a night of technical fun.
Yeah, technical
Let's
difficult.
see. What you might do is just just refresh your browser and force it to reconnect your mic, speakers, and everything.
Did this work? I just changed it.
Yes.
Wait, yes, yes, we hear you.
I don't know what happened to my AirPods, but anyway.
Oh man, tell me about it. Like I have like these very nice. They're actually incredibly cheap, but very nice headphones. But one day it took me like 20 minutes to get them to work. Just drove me nuts. Okay, so the ice cream truck, the successful business, the friends first, and you sell the truck, and let's get to the root of what we're talking about. And Rachel, when you're ready, just give me a wave. I'll pull you in. The adoption.
Well, the
You're both
pandemic
adopted. Go ahead.
the pandemic hit and I moved to Kansas City. Louise moved to the Central Coast, and we were just talking, tossing around ideas and about. She's like, we should do a podcast. We were like putting all these ideas, and I'm like, hello, we should be doing this about adoption. I mean, that's the thing. And then once we sort of spoke that out loud, it all just kind of fell into place, and
it was like that aha moment.
Yeah. So
as cheesy as that sounds.
11 episodes in. We're bi-weekly. I think we want to eventually get to weekly.
Did you start out bi-weekly?
We start bi-weekly.
We started out bi-weekly.
We
were learning this thing. Like we needed that time. Even just we were learning, doing editing and interviews, and how do we even have a podcast? We go in our closets. What's the, just.
Right.
And
actually,
you're not in your closets tonight. I thought you might be in your closets.
No. We did.
We were in our closets earlier. It hurts us.
But for transparency's sake, we got an editor, which so that we could be kind of sound professional right out the gate.
Sure.
I had a background in some journalism, so interviewing, and also I'm a nosy person who really wants to dig to the root of what anybody who anybody is. So interviewing kind of comes naturally. So
that's kind of what we did for 6 years on the ice cream truck, honestly, is like talk to each other about these issues and then talk to people who came to our truck. I mean, we really would spend hours with engaging with people hang out in an ice cream truck and street parties.
We could have had the Lucy sign up that said, therapy 5 seconds.
There you go. Well, so when I'm listening to the program, I'm feeling like maybe Rachel can speak to this too. Because I listened to the most recent episode, and I listened to a little bit of Denise and that one as well, but I haven't had time to go through a lot more. But there's the beginning of the episode where you're kind of working through some chapters of a book, which is interesting, and then you can tell us a little bit about that. But also the cultural rub, let's say, of adoption. We don't have a choice but for them to be adopted, right? I mean, I would imagine in the majority of cases, that is just what is going to have to happen. So it's kind of hard to stop the adoption to keep, families together. The thing, though, is that, and we probably should work maybe to doing that. I don't know. That's a question that could be answered as well. But the stress, the trauma, the strain of adoption is big, and it's kind of it's a factor in the lives of adoptees. So I was definitely feeling that within what I had been listening to, which is just the struggle of being adopted, and how our culture's really not very open about it. Or we're hearing places like Colorado that still have sealed records. I can't believe anybody still has sealed records. You can smoke weed in that state, for God's sakes, but your records are sealed for 100 years. So I'll stop and let you guys talk.
Well, I think it's the book you're talking about is a book by Nancy Verrier called The Primal Wound, and Sarah and I discuss a chapter of it before each podcast because adoptees, I mean, it really comes down to the baby having a primal wound with the birth mother, and
Separation.
we just the separation, and we discuss that um, together on the podcast, and we're not experts, but we're adopted, just like Rachel's adopted, and we all kind of
You're an
speak the same
expert
language.
at being
We're
adopted.
you just are, but everybody has a different story and a different
Mhm.
hurt and a different pain, and some people it was easier, some people it wasn't, but we're trying to just have the conversation so that adoptees and the whole triad, the biological mother, the adoptive mother, everybody can feel sort of a part of, like, there's stories about adoption, like Denise, who you had on, was a sibling of an adopted child. So it's a very it's a very open conversation we're trying to have to discuss it and then have guests tell their stories. And with Sarah, you want to take some?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to address the what you were saying about like most adoptions need to happen. And that's a kind of a prickly
Yeah, it sounded. I could tell.
subject. Because I think if we took profit out of the equation and because I think there's a lot of sure in many, many cases that's true. But I don't like the narrative is always like you're so lucky to have been adopted. Aren't you fortunate to have been adopted? You must have gotten out of a terrible situation. And I that's true in a lot of cases, but I don't think it's true in all the cases. And I think that the goal always should be to keep the birth mother and child together. And and I don't know what the solution is, because there is always going to be adoption, but what is the
you brought up,
solution?
and Rachel, if you want to go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah, I feel like it really depends on the situation. Can you hear me okay? Because I can't hear myself.
Yeah,
We hear you fine.
Okay. It definitely depends on the situation. If it's a situation where the biological mother just cannot, like for my situation, for example, my biological mother was just unable to take care of me, and I was lucky enough to be adopted. Um, that's one situation, but I have a brother who's also adopted, and they actually had children before they had him, and they just could not, they were in a family unit, but they just could not afford to take care of him. So then they put him up for adoption. So I guess it's just, different circumstances. And as you said, everyone has a story, everyone has different things that they've gone through on that journey. So it definitely varies.
And it is, and part of our
Go ahead.
podcast is just trying to tell the story, like the different stories. We'd like everybody to have their voice and find their voice and where they're comfortable, and everybody is in a different place with how they're dealing with their adoption as adults. And we just want that to be the narrative, and we'd like to start conversations where it's not, kind of eventually laws have to change and records have to be opened. I mean, Ancestry is helping a lot with that kind of thing because you can go on to Ancestry and figure out who you are, but you can't get your records from birth. And
Right.
Oh yeah,
and
that's true.
and we and if you're adopted, like you're not, I mean, you love the family you're in, oftentimes, not everybody, and that is your family, but you also are from another family, and you should be able to see just who you are in life. And it's kind of interesting to interview all these different guests and just get their perspectives. So, and Rachel, it's
everybody, like
interesting
you
to have
said,
yours too.
There
everybody's
is
stories.
a recurring commonality among, at least from now that we're in this adoptee community and everybody we've interviewed, no matter how good your situation was or how bad your situation is, we all seem to share this maybe sort of a hole of fear of abandonment.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like all three of us are like, yeah. It's a thing.
Definitely. Yeah,
it's a thing, Rev.
Well, even just from listening to the episodes a bit, it because, and my mother doesn't watch this program very often, but if she's watching, I Um, I don't. I'm bipolar, and I don't put any blame on my mother. But my mother was extremely young when she got pregnant, and when I was born. Well, okay, she was 18, so she wasn't that young. But I mean, for 17, maybe when she started or whatever. But I was 35 when I first became a dad, I think. So I was a little older. But the her family wasn't like huge. They're not huge huggers and nurturers and everything. And my kind of idea has always been that my mother probably didn't nurture me a lot because she really didn't know how. You know what I mean? I mean, other than what
Mhm.
would be the natural inclination. But I mean, it's one of the things that worries me about all these babies seeing everybody in masks. Like, what on earth is that going to do
Mm,
to their emotional
thought of
state of
that.
being when they don't get facial cues, three-quarters of the facial cues that they would normally see in 2 years? That's another thing. But the idea, I just get to that in that idea of being abandoned, it's got to just weigh on you today, probably. I mean, it's got to be a tough thing to shake.
Well, I think there's a lot of adoption, like adopted adults, who we didn't know. I think the core of this is we didn't know what our issues were, maybe, and so you go through your life, kind of insecurities and not fitting in and fear of abandonment, and it always has these things. And then later in life, you're like, oh, ding, 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 ding. There's this whole thing that goes off, and I think that's the core of what we're figuring out with everybody is I'm sure, like, listening to this, Rachel's like, "Oh, yeah, I have that too." Like, I just know that we all kinda have this, and I think other people have it too, of course, like your situation, but it being taken from, the primary mother, and then you're put into a new family. The adopted families often don't have any counseling or perspective of what to do with that
Certainly
pain,
not when we were adopted, for sure not.
especially back then. So
Well,
I think that
I don't want to ask your ages, but just to give
we're
us a
We're
okay
very
little
with that.
reference, I'm like
transparent about our ages.
55. Are you both over 40?
We're both
What?
over 50. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Please, yeah,
Because I
please.
don't want to
No
ask people's ages,
way.
but when you say,
Yeah.
because I mean, like, I remember when, and they still do it, I'm sure, but, you
35.
know, uh, an aunt or a young aunt or something, would disappear for 35. Did you say 35? Would disappear
No,
for
joking. Clearly.
that's okay. My dad says he's 29 and the dude is 77. The but that an aunt would go away for a while, have a baby, go a trip to Europe or something,
Right.
from some middle
Go
class or upper
away.
middle class family, and she would go, and there'd be a bunch of other girls, and they would have have their babies, and then go back and finish their senior year or whatever the case may be. But that brought up two things for me: was this idea of that you talked about, um, Sarah, about keeping families together and profit, and I don't want to. I want this to go where you guys definitely want it to go, but it made me think that when my brother was trying to adopt a child, I mean, they decided to do in vitro, honestly, because it was cheaper, because it was going to be about 40 grand to adopt, and just a huge
Yeah.
process, and which is fine in terms of making sure the parents are good, but in vitro
Wait, which
fertilization was actually cheaper than trying to adopt a kid. Not that there aren't other ways to do it that could have been cheaper. I'm not saying that they whether judging them whether they should have done that or not, but profit's kind of scary. I hadn't thought about it that way. That
well, it
Oh, and one
is.
more thing too, just quickly too, because another story is I know a couple of folks that had have their son, and basically once the young woman said she was going to do it, she lived the high life for 9, 10 months, and amen. That she got to. They paid for everything and they did everything for her, and I think they still do quite a bit for her. But I mean, it's got to be confusing. I'm just going to stop because it's just there's a lot right there.
Well, there's a lot of different kinds of adoptions now, and it used to be kind of what you talked about, the aunt that went away, or we have a lot of people on our podcast, that the girls get pregnant and the guys, my biological mother included, the father's not really involved, and she has to do it on her own and give up the baby, and they're young. And nowadays, it's with the open adoption, we're just learning about problems that come along with that. Sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's not so good because it is a business. It is a big business as
It's
well.
a multi-billion dollar business. Um,
And then people
and I
aren't
think
don't
there is some manipulation sometimes of the birth mothers, like in that scenario that you're talking about, like living the high life. And then what if that moment comes when she's having her baby and she's like, I actually want my baby. There's so much pressure around to not
yeah.
keep the baby because of all the money involved. So
Well,
it's
gee, Sarah,
definitely yep.
now this really makes me think about, my God, how horrible would it be if you are having to give up your baby because you don't have literally the economic capacity to, to not just give your kid a good life, but I mean, to feed your child. And then foisted upon you is this beautiful situation for 6 months where you don't have to worry about anything. And, they've given you whatever money they can give you or whatever they can do within whatever state you're in. And now you're like, wow, I'd kind of like to keep my baby. Life is going well. You know what I mean? Like that, you know, that's
And I think
that's
we
really
have to not ignore the bond of actually having a baby. I mean,
Yes.
I've had a baby, Sarah's had a
Yeah.
baby, so it's a lot different when you know, these may be young mothers or in situations where, I mean, I don't know all of their stories, but
sure.
I can picture that it's not always just living the high life. I mean, part of it's just
Right.
getting
Yeah,
through
and I
the
don't that kind of
situation. Now,
sounds condescending. I
yeah.
don't mean it to be that way. I
Yeah,
just
it's
mean that because I'm being critical to the people that gave her that. You know what I mean? In the sense that I'm
Well, I
being
I wouldn't be critical to
disapproving
the
of bribing
yeah.
somebody in my mind. So
I
I'll
don't
stay neutral here.
I think
I think
parents just want to have babies and they
yes,
if that's
people
the
want to have
system that they're
family.
in. Yeah.
Well, and Louise, that's a key thing that Nancy talks about in the book is like, I want to hear you say, I want to have a child. I want to have, not I want to have a baby. So, remember that part in the book?
Yeah. Yeah, you want to
Yeah.
rear a child.
You want to rear a child, not I want to have a baby and then not what's beyond that.
Right.
And a
I
lot
don't think,
of we've talked to mothers who like Sarah and I have talked to a woman and that they just like maybe your brother, they want to have a baby. They can't have a baby and they want to have a baby in their family. There's nothing wrong with that. I was in a family because of the same thing. Maybe Rachel was too and
me too.
Sarah, they couldn't have kids. And so
Yep.
and we grew up with parents who loved us and that's a beautiful thing and nowadays it's if it's expensive, it's not really the people wanting to adopt's fault that it's expensive, that it's become a business. This needs to be lawmakers and people that care about the child at a higher level. I think, like, if I'm going around with my husband and I want to have a baby, I'm working within the system that's out there. What's out there, in vitro or adoption or foster care, and there's a lot of babies that are a little bit older that aren't getting adopted because they're not newborn babies either. So I
Right.
mean, there's a
Everyone wants
whole
a baby.
everybody wants the perfect little baby, right?
Yeah.
So and there's a lot of kids who need homes, and so there's a whole thing there. And if it kind of needs to start in the lawmakers area, and the topic of adoption needs to be discussed openly and taken. The
Well, that's
baby
what
needs to be taken into account. You know?
you're both really
Right.
trying to do that. Um,
Yeah.
is to do it, and lots of people are doing it. Deanna, how are you? Have not seen you for a while. Deanna says I didn't receive any money from the prospective adoptive parents. I picked the couple, and I was almost homeless with 3 small kids.
Mm,
And she
yeah.
says I'm an adoptee and a birth mother. Um,
So she gets
yeah,
the whole feelings, all of it.
right, right.
I can't
Yeah,
even
long
imagine.
time. Um, yeah, it's I mean, it's one of those things that I definitely have adopted, cousins or things like that, but I mean, it's not something I'm around a lot, and so it is just very good to just know that this community is kind of getting out there, podcasting, getting bigger, because I know that was the other thing too that I heard you guys say when you were looking around, there wasn't a lot of, podcasts that you could, find doing this. Rachel, what is the thing that has kind of maybe helped you along the way, um, with your adoption, if you needed any help along the way. Like, what could you say to them that they might want to, put into their repertoire when they're talking about adoption?
Well, first of all, I think it's really neat that you two met because you're both adopted.
Yeah.
I have friends that I've met who are also adopted, and we clicked right away because we know each other's experience, and it's just that bond and that, that recognition of what you've gone through that people who didn't experience that kind of upbringing, they can't really relate to. So when you meet somebody else who has that same experience, it's like a bond, right away.
Yeah.
So that's awesome that the two of you have that. Um, I would say just the whole concept of finding your identity when you're adopted, that was something that I struggled with growing up. I was actually like, when I was told that I was adopted, I went looking for the papers because I knew that the papers were in the house, and I was told they're going to give them to me when I turned 18. So I went on the hunt, and I ended up finding the papers when I was like 12, 13 years old, and actually finding my biological mother and my biological grandmother's address and writing them
Wow.
letters. So I didn't hear a response back, but years later they did get in contact with me and they did say they received the letters. But I guess just like the search of finding your identity, that's definitely something that I think a lot of people who are adopted struggle with. And I think just having an open conversation about that, that really helped me, that I'm not alone in that,
Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do with our podcast is feel, hear other people's stories, like your story. And Sarah and I have different stories. We're both adopted. We have very different stories. And just we all have that sort of sense of there was something Nancy Verrier said, or maybe someone in a documentary that was made about her, that even if people don't look, they're always looking, right? I mean, you're adopted, so you're kind of always looking. And
Yeah, walk down the street, wonder, could that be my mother? Could that
yeah,
be my father?
Exactly, yeah. It's funny because I actually worked in the city where my biological family was living. And so I'd go to work and I'm like, well, what if I were to walk down the street or go to Starbucks or go to a restaurant for lunch? She could be right there, and I would have no idea. And just that whole concept, it's mind blowing to me.
it is mind blowing.
After
Our last guest, Damon, had that. He was like,
and I
"Where's
had that. Remember, my
oh
birth
yeah,
mother lived on 6th Street in between Avenue A and B in New York City in 1990. We lived across the street from each other unknowingly for a few months or 6 months or something across the street.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm reading the comments here because Rev's not here. There's
Fear of
Deanna
rejection
saying,
from the birth. Deanna
I'm
says there's
here.
also
I'm just
fear
letting
of
you all
rejection.
talk.
need Rachel and Deanna on your show.
I was reading
I'd love
that
to be on your
because
show.
I know we'd love to have you on our
Yes.
show.
I have a lot to say.
Rachel.
Rev will connect us. And Deanna says that there's also a fear of rejection from the birth family. And we just interviewed somebody today, and he did reach out to his birth mother, and she didn't want to have anything to do with him. Which is,
she rejected him.
She rejected him twice. Yeah. Or relinquished and then rejected, I guess.
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that. Yep.
Yeah. And she
And
said
Deanna
she
lived next door to her aunt and cousins. Had no idea they were relatives.
Wow, that's gonna be
quickly,
interesting.
Quickly with the genetic stuff. One of the things that people need to know when you decide to do your family's DNA, do you really want to know the truth? Do you want to know that your dad had a child by someone else and nobody in the family knew it because the DNA matches? That happens all the time with those kind of things. So opening up things for people can be really difficult. And I mean, from an adoptee standpoint, it's got to be devastating to be rejected, by your birth parent. I can't even imagine. I would never want my parents to reject me, No, I mean, whether I knew them well or not, I mean, so, but from the adoptive mother's point of view, it could be quite different. So um, that's a really difficult, difficult thing. And I think just having it out there and talking about it, for goodness sakes, might help guide somebody that's a little younger. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have done what you did, Rachel, or that it was a bad outcome or anything, but just kind of knowing that reaching out to somebody, the right way to do it, maybe, or a better approach or something like that. Um, Maybe that's
Well, it's
helpful.
hard. It's hard. Like I've been on Ancestry, and I know my biological mother's side because they found me, which was a whole thing, of course, when that comes into your life. And then I went on Ancestry more to figure out like genetically who I am, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm linked to all these other people, and I haven't reached out to them. They see me on there. They're probably
Hmm.
wondering who the heck is this that's linked to all of
Right.
us. And we've kind of, but I know who they are, but it's sort of like, do I want to blow up that family? And that's the thing. I mean, there's paths to go down, and um, that's why not having your information open is a hard thing. Because if there are people searching, it shouldn't be. We're As an adult, you should be able to go and get your birth records and figure out who you are. And many states are closed. Sarah was born in New York; it's closed.
Actually,
Mm.
no, I was born in Missouri,
Oh,
and
Missouri, it's closed. New York, Colorado. I mean, they're all very difficult. So
Wow.
these are things we just like to talk about
Well,
in the future, to have open conversations with adoptees, adopted mothers have their feelings too, and birth mothers. I mean, this is a huge thing.
Honestly, I think I did the ancestry DNA test, and that kind of helped a little bit with filling in some gaps, but still
Yeah.
it's difficult because you don't know everything. You don't really have, like, I don't have that connection with my I don't think I'll ever know who my biological father is, to be honest.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some pieces missing still. Yes, it helps a little bit, but there's still,
Hmm.
those missing pieces.
my birth mother was also adopted. And then she died in 2009, kind of like before the whole DNA explosion. So we didn't really have much information on her side of the family. And then until Ancestry, and it wasn't until like a few, I don't know, maybe 3, 4 years ago, I kind of reached some dead ends. And then I got a message from someone saying, we are matched as cousins, like first cousins once removed or second cousins or whatever. And then I ended up finding her side of the family. That was the missing piece. So I kind of found out the story. Basically, I come from a long line of party girls. What can I say?
well, I'm going to say that I'm laughing at a sense of relief because this is a very intense discussion. So let's all just take and a little bit of a om or whatever you do. Take a
Well,
deep,
Um,
take a
it
breath.
doesn't have
'Cause
to be it doesn't have to
No,
be
it
an
doesn't
no,
intense
have to.
discussion.
We
Yeah.
we have a lot of laughs on our podcast.
We have a
yeah,
lot of
no,
laughs, we have a lot of fun, and there's a lot of there's a lot, we had laughs with our guest today because there's just funny things that come up. I mean, if we interviewed Rachel, we'd laugh about, because we all have these weird things that have happened to us in conversations, and
right.
so
Well, I got to be
it's
more fun because
yeah,
no,
you got to be
because
more fun, right?
that was extremely like seriously interesting and intense. I mean, I really picked up a lot there. You know what I mean? And but it is tense. And Deanna says that my mother and aunt were hookers in the Cass
Oh,
corridor in Detroit. They were Native Americans who mixed into Mexican town back in the 60s. Natives were afraid to say they were native.
oh yeah,
Um,
I'm
it,
sure
it
there was a
may not have changed even a lot in some ways since then, Deanna, right? I was adopted by my first foster family. It was a house of hell. Yeah, I can't
Sorry to hear
imagine
that,
that
Susanna. Man.
yeah,
there are a lot
sorry
of
to hear
God,
that.
stories,
really sorry.
Mm.
Yeah,
very much so.
that's stuff that traumatizes, like, for her life. She's got to deal with this stuff. This is like, the
Mhm.
baby doesn't choose these things,
Hmm.
Right.
and
Hmm. No,
that's
the baby
hard.
doesn't choose these things, but you are both choosing um, to hopefully make that baby eventually that's adopted um, find their way a little easier because of maybe what you're doing and what you're opening up, to people out in the world. If JB, good. Well, I'm going to put your comment up there too. But Deanna says, I think our birth certificate after adoption should also show that it is not the original certificate.
Yes.
Um, Interesting. I don't know how that it works everywhere. And let me just read JB's here. It doesn't have to be based on rejection. The reason could be to give someone a better life than what they themselves could provide. It could be a sacrifice and a gift of love.
Oh, for sure.
Amen.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
I mean,
For sure. I feel that way about my biological mom, and she did a brave, brave thing. She could have had an abortion in a state that had legal abortion, and she chose to bring me into the world. And I had the best parents you could ever have. I got kind of the lottery with parents that could pick you and raise you, and lots of love. And it was because she was brave and had to change her whole life and go through a lot of shame and hurt and you just that's the thing with the biological mom too. You never when you're growing up, people always go, "Oh, you're so lucky because you would have been in a bad situation." Well, she was a lovely person, and
right.
they deserve respect too. It's a very hard thing to give up a baby for a better situation if you can't have that baby. I can't
mean,
imagine, honestly. Makes me cry.
Right.
You're going to make me cry just thinking about it because I didn't give birth to my children. And I mean, you're never going to take them away from me. I cannot imagine having to give up your child. I
Yeah.
just, doesn't matter if
And
it's
some people
maybe
have
for a
the
day
situation.
or
We
what,
talked about
it's
about when Louise and I had our sons, how we had never discussed this before until it
No.
somehow came up in an interview the other day that like when I had my son I would not let him out of my sight, and at the hospital, and like every time the door opened in the middle of the night, I'd startle. He was in his little bassinet, and I picked him up and slept with him the very first night of his birth. So we had just found this out, like knowing each other
about
for all
each
these
other.
years. Yeah.
We had the same thing, like, oh my God, never taken my child away. Well, and I was looking at Deanna's comment, the stigma of saying that you gave the child away. That's what a lot of these birth mothers have to go through, and they have situations where they can't do this alone in the age that they're in. They're young girls, they're poverty, whatever you're in, abuse. There's many reasons that people have to give away a child, but they're doing the work of carrying this baby, bringing it into the world. They're the ones who actually suffer a lot on the back end as well. And I think we have to have a lot of love for that. And I know my biological mom, she died before I could ever meet her, but it changed the course of her life. And Sarah's biological mom too. So, and probably Rachel, yours. It's not some easy, just fast thing that someone does.
Right. Yeah, my biological mother went through a lot when she got pregnant. It was not planned. She was assaulted. So it was something that she hid from the entire family, besides my grandmother and one other person. So she did go away and have me, and she was like rail thin pregnant with me because she was going through depression and just a lot of heavy things. So then she has to give up this baby that she had. So that's another thing.
Yeah. Huge.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And anyways, there is a stigma, and Deanna's right about that. That's what we're trying to break have the conversations, because everyone just pins people in certain situations about it. And
yeah, I think a lot of people are like, how could you give up your baby, but it's like, you're not really thinking about what that person's going through and the circumstances that made them make that decision. It's just like people just kind of jump the gun and be like, how could you do that? I would never be able to give up my baby. How could you give up your baby? It's like, you're not stopping to see what's going on, why that decision was made.
My
true.
birth mother wasn't a decision. Her mother, her adopted mother, said, "You are not keeping this baby," and just that was that.
That was that. Yeah.
And that happened a lot at our age and in times
a
past.
lot. Yeah.
And I'd like to think that that we gotten better, but we haven't. We've
just gotten different.
Yeah, I I literally am not trying to make light of this, but I mean, I don't think people necessarily. I'm old enough to remember when somebody would have a I'd have a cousin. I mean, I specifically had a cousin who today I think probably had, because I was little, but had some kind of pretty severe developmental disability, and he literally lived in the basement like he was in jail, and he never came
Mm,
up. Right? I mean, you couldn't whatever. I mean I'd like to think that we've gotten better than that, but the fact that there's still a stigma on adoption, means we all really have a long way to go. And
yeah.
that you guys are doing this is, again, I just think it's awesome because, um, like mental health, we got to break these cycles of stigma.
Yeah.
Right.
We talk about that with you've done that, and it's an important thing. It's everybody should be able to be part of the conversation. And I was just reading the comments too. It's like there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the comments. This is a good group.
Yes.
My daughter just got married last week. We keep in touch. Um, yeah, let's tell a couple of beautiful stories here.
Yeah.
Give us some, Rachel, if you know something, Sarah, Louise. Um, let's
We had a
give
beautiful
us
story
some of the fun
today.
stories from the show or
We had a
something.
we had a nice story. Well, there's a lot of fun stories. We had a nice story
Yeah.
today. We
I
won't
know there
out
are.
him
I'm
because
just saying,
he hasn't been
let's do one.
he hasn't been on the podcast yet, so we can't tell his whole story.
Yeah, his
But
interview hasn't aired yet, but
it hasn't aired. But he had a beautiful story. Like he um, found his biological father kind of through a back the roads thing. It was hard to do. He didn't think he'd ever figure out who he was, and now he's been welcomed into that family, and his adopted family has met them, and it's a beautiful story. And he's feeling very excited and complete and close to one of his siblings. And there's a lot of really neat stories. And even when they're not neat, they're neat because you're on the road of self discovery. So even if they're hard or painful, it doesn't mean they're negative. Do-
Right.
Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense,
Yeah,
Hmm.
but
it
It
makes
makes
perfect
very,
sense.
very much makes sense.
yeah.
Um, love is a lot of work. Love is painful, but
love
it's
is
still
big.
love.
Yeah. And I think a lot of adopted kids were loved when they were given up for adoption. Just because they
Mm.
were given up for adoption doesn't mean they weren't loved. That's why it is so painful for the baby and
Oh,
the biological mom and the adopted mom who brings home a baby that's hurting. They don't know what's wrong with their baby, maybe, and how to soothe that or have the conversations about it. So that's sort of what
Well,
we're
and
trying to.
it's not necessarily, it hasn't been highlighted
Mhm.
about the babies know what's going on. Like you separate a baby from its mother, they know. So they're in grief for quite some time. No matter how great the situation is that they land in, they're going to be grieving because they're human beings and they're people, even though
well, and
they're
they're
not
bound. Their
right.
bond
So
is
I
much
think
deeper
that's
than
just
just the outside the
that,
womb bond. I mean, there's chemical
yeah.
bond that is not they're not feeling anymore, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's the convert. I think that's the layer that people don't know, that haven't understood in the whole adoption industry, is like that baby is grieving. If you're adopting a baby and they're crying all the time, they're not a bad baby. They're in grief,
Right.
Yeah.
And
and I
that's a
think
form of
that's
trauma too,
yeah, it's
babies going
trauma.
through
It is
trauma.
trauma. And they're just realizing, I mean, really psychology's catching up with, I think psychology knows, but it's catching up to the modern language because people didn't realize that, honestly. I don't think that was actually realized in regular culture, just that the baby,
Sure
it's like
wasn't
here,
talked about mainstream. No.
no. And I think now the conversation's getting there. And then where's the teaching of it? Where's the literature? Is there counseling for people, counseling for the birth mother, counseling for the adoptive mother? That we're trying to find out if that's really happening. It is in some places, it's not in others. And like mental health, there's a lot of great counseling out there. If we could all
Mhm.
get some. Adoptees need it too.
I mean, you would think that in a civil society, I'm not sure such a thing exists, but that you would automatically get counseling. You know, if you're gonna adopt a child, we're gonna give you, lifetime worth of counseling, or available counseling or something. I mean, or at least a yearly update or something. But I mean, yeah, makes total sense. I mean, I never thought about the grieving part, but I bet you three have and did. Maybe even before you realized that it was quite a thing. Um,
I
Yeah,
don't
I
think I
always wonder.
realized
Oh,
it.
go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rachel, you go ahead.
I just always wonder like how that affected me in the long run, like having that trauma at such an early
Yeah.
stage in life when your brain is still developing. How does that carry on and how does that affect you as you're developing like into, an adult even, I just wonder like I don't know, there's got to be some sort of research that they can do where you can see how that affects you as you develop, that early stage of trauma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and it does affect, we know, we're much older than you. So it does affect you in relationships, and when you bond with someone, or, there's a big push away, and but don't
Yeah.
leave me, but let me push you away, but don't leave me. There's all these things that we do as adoptees our whole lives in some form or another. We all do it differently or the same. And that in itself is just the thing. We probably, if we met you, out playing pool too, we'd be like, no way, no way, you have these things. So it's this common thing that goes between us.
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
I was just looking up some adoption statistics, actually, which was kind of interesting. About 5 million adoptees at a given time in the United States, which is about 2 to 4% of the population, is what they're
Right.
saying. It's
Mhm.
it's a pretty good chunk of people when you've got 330 million. 5 million. That's a lot of people, and like you said, a big industry built up around it. But I think it's being countered by these new ideas, right? And open ideas, and people,
Yeah.
sharing ideas and knowledge. I do wonder what, and I want to touch on Deanna's comments here, so I'll ask those. But let me ask the question, give you a chance to think about it. Is from what so just quickly, a closed adoption, for people that might not know what a closed adoption is, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically is, you agree to have your child adopted, it goes through the court process, the birth certificates are made, the paperwork is done, and nobody gets to see it. That's a closed adoption, right? And
Yeah,
then an
everybody's
open
told a
adoption
little
is,
bit, and that's it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Non-identifying. They call that non-identifying information. Your birth mother, she was a tall, athletic, blonde, blue eye, but that's non-identifying information. Everybody gets that out the gate.
right. So, and then an open adoption, I want you to kind of all tell us what that is like, and do you the good and the bad, because I heard one of you say that we've learned some things that are difficult about it too. But I feel that they should check on adoptees up to 3 years after the finalization, says Deanna. For heaven's sakes, these states can't keep track of the foster kids and everything else they have
I was
going
gonna
on. And
say
not that
that's
I would say that's a bad thing at all. And and I certainly couldn't speak to it. I'm not having been adopted or an adoptive parent, but um, it makes sense to me what Deanna says. I have a great relationship with one of my sisters, the others not so much, and that was Deanna was the second child of 5, I think you said. That was the only one that was
or
adopted,
6.
or 6, yeah. And then I'm still working on getting the courage to get my sealed certificate for my tribal enrollment. There you go. Um, yeah. So, and just the stress, the courage. She said she's tried to get the courage, and we're sending you love, 6, Deanna. Thank you.
Yeah, it is courage, a lot of this stuff, because it just it it takes a lot to figure out who you are, because you're scared of rejection again, and you're scared of dead ends and roadblocks, and it's frustrating, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into the searching of these things. And good luck, Deanna. It's a big thing. It's definitely a
Yeah.
big thing. I don't know. And
And reach out
you were
to
talking,
us on
yeah, reach out
Facebook,
to us.
Twitter, Dana. You can find
The
us.
Making of Me podcast on all the
Oh,
social.
you know what? I'll put it on there because I can make sure it's a clickable link. So
Okay, great.
go ahead and
And you
talk
you
amongst
brought up
yourselves for a second.
well, you brought up something, Rev. You said the statistics of adoptions were in the book we're reading, even though it was written in the 90s. But Sarah, what were the statistics that adoptees
Oh,
make up? That's
I
fascinating.
was gonna bring that up.
Yeah.
Adoptees make up what 2 to 3, and when the book was written, like 2 to 4% of the population. Yet 40% of kids in juvenile hall and runaways and alcohol problems were adopted kids. That's a huge statistic.
40% of the kids in
all
lockdown
people,
of some
40% of all people in those situations
40% of the kids in like juvenile hall, or
they make up 2% of the population.
2% of the population, and yet the rehabs and juvie hall and all that are 40% adopted.
Wow.
You know that this is a delicate sorry, I'm trying to frame this in a way that it doesn't sound like a dude that doesn't know what he's talking about adoption. But the thing is that you brought up the point of this now, the rate of, maybe incarceration even, of adoptees versus other folks. And there's this perception, I think, in some quarters of adopted kids can be, harder to handle. And I always thought, well, stop, that just because they're adopted doesn't mean that they're harder to handle. But the fact of the matter is, they're stressed the hell out. They've got a lot of trauma, so maybe things are harder for adoptees, And
I think in the teen years is when it really starts to be a thing too.
Oh yeah, because you're trying to navigate through being a teen, but you're also trying to find your identity as well.
Yeah,
like that was my issue.
And you've got surging hormones, which, let's face it, are not easy for anybody.
That doesn't help anybody.
Exactly. So it's just the whole stuff that you're trying to navigate through.
Yeah,
so
that's when you really start to. Yeah, me too. That's when you start to really.
I'm adopted and I have surging hormones. I'm screwed.
And and when you
there is available to me.
And the kids don't know that they're, I mean, we're knowing this as adults looking back, what were our triggers and issues. And I mean, when you're 13, you don't know this. You don't know what's going on with you. I mean, unless you have very enlightened people around you to help you, it's a rare thing.
Well, I was given a great explanation one time when we were doing we were having an event with our nonprofit, and we were talking about trauma in I think we're using the ACEs trauma, the evaluation tool, and one young woman who was 18, 20 years old, just spoke up and said, people don't understand. They think, we don't deserve reparations because, we weren't in the Civil War. And she said, but let me walk you back to my great, great, great grandma who was a slave.
Mm-hmm.
And her child, who was not born a slave, but was the child of two slaves. So she was raised in her environment that she knew was that of slavery through her parents. And you go to the next one and you can cut it by 50%. And you go to the next one and you can cut it by 25%.
Yes.
But the point is what they have learned, those things instilled in them, still come through slavery those many generations, later. And I think that's something that we don't think about when we think about things like that. And we think about things like, adoption. These things can carry through and really need to be addressed in larger ways than we tend to do things, I think, as a community of people.
Generational trauma is what that is.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
And it is true because, and I was reading what Deanna wrote about, they tell you should be more grateful. Sometimes personalities clash in the families. And I was thinking that's my husband and I recently, and Sarah's seen it too, and I don't know if Rachel you have, but Three Identical Strangers, that documentary that they made about the kids that were separated, the babies that were separated at
They
birth,
were
these
triplets separated,
yes. And
separated
they
at
found
birth.
each other later, and one of the kids just did not fit his family. I mean, that's the truth. He didn't gel and fit in. The other two didn't, and he killed himself. I mean, he had a lot of things from that. You don't, just because you go into a nice family doesn't mean you fit in that family. I personally
Right.
did, and I lucked out in that way. I can't speak for others, but we're talking to a lot of people who don't fit. They're not. It's not
Yeah.
great.
I definitely didn't feel like I fit in completely. That's why I went searching for
Yeah.
for answers, basically,
Yeah.
So I just felt out of place a lot of the time. Like I felt like I felt internally that something was off. So I had to I wanted answers, so that's why I went searching and found the safety deposit box, and there was everything that I needed.
You're a detective. That's what we say. We're
I
all
am.
detectives.
We all,
Yeah.
we talk about that on the podcast about all, like, that's what we've also found in common with other adoptees. We are all
90% of
Sarah and I are
adoptees are
it.
private investigators, or
Yes,
90% of private investigators are adoptees.
that would not surprise me.
we had an ice cream truck. We have a podcast, and now we're going to have a detective agency, and Rachel will be
Yes,
I like that.
the
third
Adoptive
co-part.
detective agency. There's a book or a movie there.
We've
Somebody.
talked about it. That's the
There we
funny
go.
thing, because
That'll be your next
we're
thing.
pretty good.
And back
Yeah,
in
well,
those
what is-
surging hormone days, I was a great investigator on every boyfriend that crossed my path.
You were a what?
Never mind. It's just a stupid.
Just a little humor.
We'll rewind it.
We're
All
putting
right. Yeah,
in some humor there.
That might be beneficial that I can't hear sometimes.
I was trying to
The,
bring some levity to the conversation.
That's good. Yeah, no, I mean, again, whew, that is like, this is fantastic. I mean, this is absolutely a beautiful show, and like I'm gonna have to have a comics tomorrow night, and just to, this be totally goofy, but let's be a little goofy. We can be a little goofy. We can take a breath. I do want to say that tomorrow we have Chris Cohen, CTO, Chief Technology Officer of this amazing app. It's called Filmic Pro. You can use that app to shoot, honestly, movie quality film, like Hollywood quality films with your iPhone. Now, like me, we got a lot of gear here to make me look so lovely. So you need more behind the camera than just the camera to make it do that. But Chris is a really cool guy. We're going to talk about a lot of things. Mark Goldman, the CEO of HAPS, will be there. And so we're going to have a lot of fun talking live streaming, filmmaking, iPhones, and all of that kind of stuff. So that'll be a really good conversation. You can support all of the folks on the platform if you have that kind of money, Jeff Bezos, and I think you do. And you can just go by sponsoring them on their sponsor page. And Jeff, you can sponsor me for, I don't know, $500,000 a month or so. I'd feel pretty comfortable with that from you. I mean, I feel like that's about as close as we'll ever be. And or even $5 a month for one of your favorite broadcasters. You can also give some coins, and you can buy coins, gift coins to your fellow broadcasters. It's a lot of fun. So, okay, now, I missed the 1 hour wrap up. Ugh. So what I need to do, always remember at 59 minutes, is cut it for Instagram. Because then I take the Instagram and I stack everybody's thing on there, and then I'm supposed to be doing that. So this will get on Instagram eventually. You'll get your own copy. We don't have to quit here, by the way, but I'm just going to do we can use our other ending, but I'll get it figured out. But let's tell us what's in the future for the podcast and for the team. Like, you've done an ice cream truck, you've done a podcast. What, are you going to the moon next? I mean, what are you doing?
Well, that's how you guess. That's detective.
Rachel, you looking for some work? Because we're over.
Yes, please hire me. I'm in.
Yeah, I like this entrepreneurial thing. Bring some more entrepreneurial friends some evening too.
Sarah and I were I'm going to give a plug. We were just in a magazine called Ageist, and we
Yes.
have
Oh
an
yeah, I
article
saw. I
in
read
there.
that.
But part of it is
Yeah,
just
put that
kind of
link up there, Rev.
I will
yeah,
find
Rev,
it.
plug that.
I'm gonna send it to
So
you.
we
Oh, yeah,
we
do that.
just
There you go.
I think what's the future for us is we're going to continue the podcast and get more stories out there and continue the conversation. We'd like to be voices in this conversation, not the people or experts, just
Yes.
open
Yes.
people to learning, not pretending we know more than we do, just open is listening and passing on information and trying to get others to talk that may know more and that can help maybe in the legal and the level of counseling or laws being made or things that would really help young children and families that are going through
I
this
got it,
that we could help in the
Sarah.
future. So
You got it?
that's it.
Yep. That. Yeah.
And we'd like to have Rachel on our show because she's awesome.
Oh,
Yeah.
I would love to be on your show. Absolutely.
We love
I'm so
it.
excited.
We
That
hear
is,
more about your story.
that is one of the big features of this program that I love the most is the connections that people make, because
Yeah.
of the show. We've got a filmmaker, like a Grammy nominated musician and now filmmaker who's buddies with Amanda Moresco, a producer, and like they connected through the show and they're working together. So I love seeing these things come together in this format. As far as the podcast goes, how many episodes in are you?
We are 11, about to release. Yeah.
11.
Yeah,
We had we number them by each chapter that we review from the book. But we had a special episode with Nancy Verrier, who is the author, and Rebecca Autumn, who
nice. Oh, very good.
Yeah. So,
that was a cool episode to have her on because she's kind of well known in the adopted community, and each podcast has like someone's name. So like episode 10 is Damon, just his name. It's just his story, and so we just keep going. There's so many to have.
Can
Denise,
we do this for 1 second? It can be however I don't want it to be the hottest guy or hottest girl or anything. However anybody identifies, but who's like the hottest adoptees out there, and who do we know, famous adoptees, and who can we get on your show? Like, let's work on it.
Oh yeah, tell us, Sarah. We got some people.
He can.
Who do you want?
You know who I'm talking about.
Keenan.
We have a list.
Yeah. Okay. We have we do have a list.
Well, okay. Look, did I hear you say Keanu?
Jamie Foxx.
No,
Keegan
Michael.
Oh, okay. Jamie Foxx. Okay, interesting. Good.
Keegan Michael Key.
Yeah, Keegan Michael Key.
Oh,
Michael
okay.
Key.
From the
Key and Peele.
Right.
Yeah.
Ray Liotta.
Oh, interesting.
Francis
All right.
McDormand.
Now look. Out of those three, not that Ray Liotta is not.
Oh, Colin Kaepernick.
Oh, there you go. A huge star because he was, but he's kind of retired, so I might be able to get him. You know what I mean? So if I can, I'll try to get him on your show. But I'll reach out to him and see if we can bring him on and if he'd be open to talking about that. But shoot for here's what I'm saying is reach for whoever you want to be on the show. It will actually bake your noodle. People will say yes. People will say yes, and you'll be like, "Oh, I can't believe it!" Because you have to ask. You know what I mean? You have to ask.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
We asked Ice Cube, but his manager was like, or no, it was Ice-T. Sorry.
Oh, it was Ice-T, and he got back to us. He's like, he wants to hear about it, but he doesn't want to do it. Yeah.
Here's the thing:
trying to get
go around them.
We love him.
Now, don't do it now. You don't want to do it now.
Yeah.
But so the coinage, the communication of the Hollywood, working Hollywood people, where most of my friends are, is Instagram. I say this all the time to people. I could text somebody. I could call somebody. I could email somebody. I could, I don't know. I could Facebook somebody. I could Twitter somebody. But if I Instagram them, boom, they will get back to me.
Really?
That's kind of, the Clubhouse Hollywood kind of set. It's Instagram. They get back to you really fast. But Ice-T, that's a little more challenging. But I've reached out to a Hollywood person that you would know who they are, and we're talking. We'll see if we get there. And I did it by dinging them on their Instagram. You know what I mean? So especially if it's
Yeah.
not somebody hugely famous, just say, "Hey, this is who we are. This is what we're doing." They'll say yes and not even think about talking to their manager. You know what I mean? You know, and you can get lucky
Yeah,
that
there's
way.
I think so too, because it's a good podcast, and we're
Yeah.
respectful, and this, you know, like Colin Kaepernick, for instance, is putting out a book about his adoption. And
Two scoops. Yes, I have. You just didn't know it.
and I'm excited to read that, you know, because he wants to tell people about it. There's people do want to talk about it,
Right. Well,
and
yeah.
they, no matter if they're famous or not, they're still adopted. They still have the same feelings we have. I mean, that's the reality. So
Oh yeah, and I don't.
yeah,
I was actually writing a piece for something that for publication talking about this, and um, I have I want famous people on my show because it's fun, no doubt, right? But the main reason is it brings up the views. You're like, oh, revolution. That's kind of that sounds ridiculous. You just want your views up, yes, because it gets more people to see shows like this. And
yeah.
these are the shows that I want to be able to do that more people can see. So again, encouraging you to go after the people that you want, to go after. Don't be afraid to do it. But you know what I mean? Like if
Sarah and I aren't
some
afraid of anything.
Yeah,
We kind of go
yeah,
for it.
I don't think either of you are. And so, but if, yeah, I'll, because Mr. Leota would be an interesting guest, so I'll see what I can do. But the other two, I'll say hi, but they won't even acknowledge. I can't get Eddie Vedder to say hi to me, and I'm trying. So.
Thank you, Rev. We appreciate that.
We sure do.
I need to
What we-
take my dog out before it's too late.
Sarah's in
We've been on
Kansas
for
City.
an hour and 15 minutes. I think we covered it pretty well. But let me let you, Sarah, since you've got to take the dog out, let me let you wrap it up for you a little bit, and then we'll wrap it up with the other two folks here and call it a night.
I put my information I sent it to you guys if you can see
Okay,
it.
good.
My email and everything.
I'm excited about that. Me too.
I'm going to just do this. Sometimes that's the easiest way to do it.
I'm lost in how to write mine. Oh, it would be a mini series, right? Don't hold your breath, Haps. Ha! Oh, two scoops was listening. So listen, a lot of you, and Deanna. This is what another thing that I love about Haps, and we've known each other a long time, and I never know who's watching. If you're watching, and you would like to be on the podcast with Louise and Sarah, I'd reach out to them. If you know somebody that would be a good fit on the podcast, great. If you know somebody that would, like to sponsor them at Patreon, put your Patreon in there. Actually, send me your Patreon, and because I can make it do a clickable link, and support their Patreon. Support the work. Support the work that they're doing. It's valuable and very interesting. Just beautiful work, and I just appreciate both of you for being on. And I would just like to say, I think Rachel will keep you on here for a minute. We'll talk about some co-hosting things in the future. And Sarah, what kind of dog? So we got to know what kind of dog.
Let's see if you can see him.
Ooh, all right.
Sleeping.
His name's Woody. He's often on our podcast.
Woody? Hey.
Oh.
He's a brindle little.
I see the spot where he is, but I can't tell what he is. Hold on, though. Wait. Let's make Woody number 1 here. Hang on a second.
Oh, poor Woody. He's like, what?
Woody's like, what's going on?
He's been all day.
We're big into our dog. We're big into our dog.
It's not clicking over for some reason.
My dog's
I'm sorry.
sleeping too. She's right here.
Oh, is she? What's your dog's name?
I heard your dog bark a little earlier, Rachel.
Yeah, that was her.
Aww.
I have Duchess.
That's my dogs.
Duchess is 14, and she's like back there with treats.
All three of you have dogs. Beautiful.
Of course, because adopted people love dogs.
Adopted people need their
I like it. Oh, look at that. Wow, we are really delayed because you just popped up on the screen by yourself now. So
that's weird. I sent you the Patreon link.
Oh, okay. All right. Hang on.
Yeah, Rev, thanks for the promotion stuff. And
yeah.
I think to close it, we just want to say, tune into the podcast. It's a lot of fun. It's not all grave and serious. We actually laugh a lot
Yeah, we do.
and have open discussions. And please send us people like Deanna. Thank you for all your feedback. So I'm loving reading all your comments and meeting Rachel and just everybody on here. Denise had to get off, I think, and Anna, don't hold your breath. Habs, don't hold your breath. You're not getting any famous people.
Oh, yeah. I've already had famous people on the show. Come
I'm just
on.
laughing because the
Oh.
comments are cracking me up.
Yeah. Please let me
Guys,
know if
I'm
I can
gonna
help
jump-
in any way. I think Rachel would be a testament to this. I stick with my guests afterwards, see what opportunities we can find, see what doors
Cool.
I might actually be able to open,
Thank you.
But like I said, I always try for the celebrities because, like I said, sometimes somebody will say yes. But anything you
right.
need, I'm always happy to promote, always happy to send me a link. And if I don't retweet it or whatever the hell you do on Instagram or Facebook, just ask me to do it. You know what I mean? I'm happy. I'm happy to do it. I
Thank
want to
you.
encourage people to connect with you and keep it going. So just
It's
thank
been
you
really nice.
both.
It's been nice to meet you and thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks so much. This was a fun night.
It was a
nice
fun
meeting
night.
both of you.
Thank
It
you
was
both.
nice meeting you.
Nice
And
to
it was a
meet you,
pleasure
Rachel.
to have
Soon.
Rachel on. Yeah, see you soon for sure. You'll have to
soon.
listen to that
Yeah.
episode, Rev.
Oh, thank you both. Take care. We'll
All
talk
right.
soon.
Okay,
Talk soon.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Bye. All right. And now I got to carefully. Oh, their cameras turn off by themselves. All right. So we will do
Then
a
there
little
were
bit.
two.
Hey, we're
Then there
sticking
were
around
two.
for a minute. 2 scoops. Well, Anna, I mean, you're right. The most famous person I've had on the show is probably still not a household name, but yeah, there's, they're still kind of famous. But yes, I don't want to get into a famous people debate because it's, it is about the views because we want more views so more people can see episodes like that we just did. Rachel, what was that like talking about adoption, if you don't mind saying?
It was really awesome. Like, I think what they do is just amazing. Like, I think it's a great idea to have that open conversation and share multiple people's stories about what they've gone through because, as we were discussing earlier, everyone has a different story. And, I really feel like even though the stories are different, you can still relate to what people are saying, through their own stories. Like I'm sure if once I do the podcast with them, I'll be able to relate to some of the things they went through with their stories. So I think it's important to keep that kind of conversation open, and it's an important topic to talk about because it is something that is not really commonly talked about. So yeah, I thought that was really cool, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to be in the same space with them tonight.
Well, I'm glad you did too, and I'm glad that I reached out and that it turns out that you've got some experience with being adopted. It's oh, lovely. You do have a cough button, Revolution.
Are you okay?
Yes, I am fine. I'm just old. It's just fall. It's fall, allergy season. The oh gosh, here comes the allergy season. But yeah, so no, I'm really glad you were able to be a part of that, Rachel, because it's I f- I love having a co-host. I love having um a a woman co-host or I don't know, an Asian man, somebody that's not a white guy, right? On here all the time. And I mean it in this sense of you're adopted, you're a woman. I'm not adopted, I'm a man. I was able to bring another perspective, to the show. And that really, that was really great too. I really appreciate that you could come on the show for that because, we need as many opinions and ideas and conversation as we can get.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. That's very sweet of you.
She's a very cool person. I know her personally. She's awesome. She's
Nice.
awesome. Yeah, so let's figure out what show you're gonna be on next. We can talk after I close out here. And
Sounds great.
Denise, you're still here. Thank you, Denise, for all you have done to make
Denise, you
these.
are a rock star. You are a strong, strong woman. And I really admire you from just what I heard tonight with what you've gone through. You're amazing. You really are.
And that is, and anybody out there that's watching, actually, we won't be talking. We weren't talking about adoption, but we were talking about Latinas and their representation um, in business in general, but really in specific in Hollywood. And then we also talked about the usage and the word Latinx, and had a very interesting dialogue around that too. And you can scroll back on my profile and find that program, which just about a week ago, maybe a little more. So Denise Cruz Castino, two scoops, JB residents all the way from um, Sweden.
Wow.
Deanna,
Hello.
great to see you as always. And let's see, I commented up there. I was here. And the other point I was going to make is there's a lot of you watching, and that we don't know who you are, or if you're watching this on the replay and any of this. And I should have made these breaks earlier, but if you're feeling kind of stressed out about having seen something like this, if it's kind of triggered you or anything like that, please make sure that you talk to somebody, maybe seek a little help or guidance. You could, if you're, again, just kind of, this was an emotional evening. If you're feeling some of that, you've got the crisis text line. We've had them on the show before. That is a great place you can go. You don't even have to talk. You can just literally text and talk to somebody if you need to. So, on that note, please do it if you need it. And I certainly get therapy twice a week. Rev did my comment above. Quite sad numbers. Hang on a second. I'm scrolling. Oh, suicide more common among adults that have been adopted, and specifically international adoptions. Among adopted from Korea, 1 out of 20 make suicidal attempts. That's very high. In Sweden, suicides are 3.7 times more common among international adopted than among Swedish born. There would be an interesting conversation, JB, about Sweden. Um, I'll talk to you offline about it, that we might have sometime, but that you made me think of. And yes, those are numbers that honestly, don't surprise me because of what I've learned tonight about the stress of being adopted. Rachel, I hadn't even thought about it. Like
It's a lot. It's a
adoptees
lot.
are stressed the hell out.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a lot for sure. I think the whole, as I was saying, the whole trying to find your identity, that's something that's very stressful, especially when you're young. And as we were saying, especially when those hormones are raging and you're at that age where you're going through all of the things biologically, but you're also going through a lot of mental things because you're trying to figure out who you are to the core, like who you are blood wise, like who your family is, like why don't I look like, for me, is like my mom is white. It's like, why don't I look like my mom? Why are people saying that that's not my mom? So that was
mhm.
something also that I had to go through. It's just like a scramble of not knowing your identity and having to find that can be very taxing and very, heavy to deal with, especially as a child.
Yeah. Um, Having pathways to make that journey less difficult for younger people, I think, is important. And I know there are writers and authors and podcasters and everybody that are doing that. But for goodness sakes, it probably should be something, maybe in, I don't know, health class at least. Maybe they cover for a chapter about adoption, just so kids. Because I'll tell I can definitely remember when I was a kid, that stigma of an adopted person. I mean, feeling that they were less than something, right? Because that's what society was telling me. There was something, you know, um, I don't want to say you're an adoptee, but right, but I mean, there were issues around it, and in the culture, and um, like I said, I don't think about it much as an adult, how difficult it could be. But Also,
Yeah.
there's some beautiful things. And you did say, you kind of wonder what you would be like um, if such and such maybe hadn't occurred. I love those what ifs too. But the thing that I do like um, is that we get to meet you. People get to meet you and get to hear your fine music here one of these evenings as well. I know you're kind of in a writing mood. So, as that EP gets closer and closer, we're going to have you on for that. And I've got more guests coming up in October. So I hope you had fun and hope we can see you back.
Absolutely. I'd love to perform live at some point too, if you would
Yes.
have me.
Whenever you want. We're ready. We're ready.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Awesome.
Fantastic. And I have, and not that I've had it exclusive, folks. You can hear her writing as she goes sometimes. She posts things um, on her Instagram that, she may have just written a little earlier in the day. So very fun to hear your songs coming together. I will type your info one more time into
I'm just gonna
here.
see what's going on here in the chat. Here,
Yeah, go ahead and take a peek. We're in the definitely.
Anna says
more
trauma is a
casual.
lot to work on. Absolutely. Being raised in a foster home, I don't have that experience, but I've heard many stories. It must be very tough. Complimenting the microphone.
That's a nice Newman microphone. Way to go, JB. Mr. I can spot a microphone at a mile away.
What else do we have here? I really appreciate all these comments and just the engagement that we got tonight with these comments and the stories. And thank you guys for engaging. And it just really makes the show more full, I think, to get your opinions and your thoughts and your input.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice little, kind of a nice little cozy conversation. Felt, kind of intimate and personal, which is very nice, to have around an issue like this. And lots of people will see this over the course of time on the replay. If you are watching this on the replay, scroll back through. Everybody's put their contact info up there. And we will definitely look forward to what's coming soon. So Rachel AO on Instagram, check her out. She's awesome. And I will see you, well, in a minute because I'm going to hit end, Rachel. But
Right.
yes, we'll see you on our show very soon. Thanks,
Goodbye,
everybody.
everybody. Thanks for coming and listening. Much appreciated. Please check out my stuff. Let me know what you think. See you soon.
And I learned that talking about my story has helped me to heal. I don't hold in anymore for my sanity. Beautiful, Deanna. Nice parting thoughts. Thank you, Deanna. I think it was a great show as well. Everybody take care. Peace be with you.